What are your expectations for the next 10 months to take the American focus again? I assume you're more or less as worried about a second Trump term as many of your colleagues over at the Atlantic.
Yes, yes.
I don't know how much daylight there is between you and David Frum or Tom Nichols or anyone else who writes over there, but what are you expecting, and what are your concerns, and what, if anything, can we try to do about it?
Well, boy, oh boy. I'm usually the calm voice in the room. I think a second Trump term would end liberal democracy as we know it in America, and he'd do that within about the first year. And the way he would do that would be by openly defying court orders and then normalizing that. His party and his movement will support him in doing that.
But so, okay, before I want to hear everything you're thinking, obviously, but how does this track with your fairly sanguine remarks of a scant few minutes ago about how robust our institutions prove themselves to be the first time around?
The second time around will be a lot harder. I don't think I'm alone in thinking that. I think you've made similar points. And you know all the reasons for that. There's the amount of learning that he did the first time around. There's the fact that he won't be running for a second term, so he won't have to worry about political consequences. And there's the fact that the one thing that he did not do in his first term, which was openly defy court orders, we know he can do, because that's exactly what he did at Mar-a-Lago. He was ordered by a court to turn over documents. And his attitude is, I don't have to if I don't want to. And he's now standing by that position. So I think we can assume that he'll be a lot more effective in a second term. And when he says, "You and what army?" to the Supreme Court, we're in a different world, right? Then he's using pardons to immunize himself and his allies against legal consequences. He's using vacancy appointments to circumvent Senate confirmation and make Jeffrey Clark the Attorney General, acting Attorney General, for example. He's ignoring appropriations bills and putting money where he thinks it should go. He's suborning the military, and he is using the Justice Department to cause ruinous bills, defense bills for people like Sam Harris. And more. Those are only some of the things he can do, and I see no reason why he wouldn't. So those are the stakes we're playing for. Those are different stakes than the first time around. We've never seen that kind of direct attack on American institutions. So you asked about the next 10 months. I'm the least partisan person you've ever met. And in fact, there's some Trump policies that I agree with. We could talk about those. But I think it's very important that those of us who believe in liberal democracy on the left and on the right fight this thing very hard. I'm sure you guys also agree, I'm guessing at least you agree, that what's so dismaying here is that so much of the public is willing to follow where this guy wants to go. If you had predicted any of this in 2015, I would have said you were crazy. So now we're in the fight of our lives. And it's...
Just to hover over this point here, I would imagine that most of the public, certainly most of the people who support Trump would hear what you just said as some form of paranoid conspiracy theory, right? That, like, this is the idea that Trump will spell the end of democracy in America or anything like it.
As we knew it.
Yeah. So spell out more what you think is at stake, and perhaps explain how you understand Republicans and Republican elites going along for this ride. Do you have any theory of mind for someone, in the Senate who is supporting Trump? I mean, they're even closer to these dominoes that will fall than you are. Why aren't they worried about ushering in the complete derangement, at a minimum, of American democracy?
Well, I don't understand the psychology of this, and I probably never will, because so many people have behaved in ways that I thought were so strange and unpredictable. I mean, you tell me why someone like Lindsey Graham, who denounced Trump and what he stood for in the most strident and impassioned of terms, becomes the leading apologist and, in fact, warrior for this movement. And then tell me why Liz Cheney did not. But I think we know why there are a lot more Lindsey Grahams than there are Liz Cheneys, and that's because there's a lot of fear of getting on the wrong side of Trump and his MAGA movement. Among other things, they're physically intimidating. We've heard credible reports that policymakers, people like members of Congress, are afraid of what could happen to their families if they get on the wrong side of the MAGA movement. A friend of mine—
Yeah, that is such a shocking detail that I think Liz Cheney talks about in her book, and maybe Romney talks about it. And
Romney talks about it, yeah.
I mean, but just that alone, I mean, forget about anything else that may or may not be true of Trump himself. The fact that we are here in American political life where behind closed doors you have Congress people confessing that they would vote otherwise but for the fact that they're afraid the mob will come for them and their families because of how this guy is behaving politically and on social media. It's just so, I mean, that encapsulates everything that's wrong with the current moment. That's intolerable. And I don't understand how half of society not only tolerates it, but effectively celebrates it.
Yeah, not all MAGA people do, but there's a brand new poll out from the unpopulist Shika Dalmia website, which looks at these questions of authoritarian populism and finds that there's a lot of support. I can't remember the numbers offhand, but there's a disconcertingly high level of support. And by the way, not only on the right, there's a fair number among Democrats that has not been activated because they don't have someone to rally behind. But there is a surprising and dismaying amount of support for the idea that strong leaders should just do what they need to do to get the job done and represent the will of the people, much more than you would have hoped. And it creates these openings. A friend of mine is Stephen Richard, the Maricopa County recorder, a Republican of great integrity who defended the free and fair election there. And, you know, he was under armed guard for a while, the county sheriff, a Democrat, by the way. Yeah, so it's unthinkable, but here we are. You know, another manifestation of this is the argument that I keep hearing about why Trump should not be struck from ballots on constitutional grounds, that he aided and abetted an insurrection, is, well, just think what MAGA might do if that happens. Mm-hmm. Just think about the violence that could unfold if the Constitution is unforced. And when we've reached the point where we're afraid of enforcing the Constitution because of an insurrection, doesn't that kind of mean we've already half given up